10 a.m. or on YouTube, channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.
Hi, I'm Nicole, Jacinto. Join us on Healthline with 𝗵𝗏 as we discuss the latest health and medical topics with doctors from 𝗵𝗏. For a healthier and uplifting lifestyle, tune into Healthline with 𝗵𝗏 on DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido TV. You've got questions, we've got answers.
Watch and listen to Healthline with 𝗵𝗏, Mondays, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Airing on Sky Cable Channel 224 and on all DTT boxes. Simulcasting online on Facebook and YouTube. Listen and watch on your mobile devices. Just search DZRJ Radio Bandido.
You're about to experience Healthline, a show where doctors from 𝗵𝗏 interact with you for a healthy, uplifting lifestyle. Moderated by Nicole Jacinto. You've got questions, we've got answers. So welcome to Healthline.
Hi everybody and welcome to Healthline with 𝗵𝗏. I'm your host Nicole Jacinto. This week we're going to talk about screen time for children. And we're here with Dr. Bernadette Benitez, and she is, let me just introduce her because she's already there. I can see her pretty face there in red and her, she's got her white coat on. And so, doctor, can you tell us your specialty? That way people will know why you are the best person to discuss this with us today.
Hi there, Nicole. Thanks for this opportunity. I am Dr. Bernadette Benitez. I'm a developmental and behavioral pediatric specialist from the Makati Medical Center.
Okay, so that's great, doctor. This is right up your alley. And can I ask you first, when we talk about children, I know we're going to focus the discussion on a certain group of children, but can you define what children, what the term children means in general for a pediatrician?
By definition, the pediatric population is defined as 0, meaning newborn, until 18 and 364 days. That's by definition. But I guess because we're talking about screen time, maybe we can just focus from, on the younger age group until maybe school age, Nicole,
Yes.
if that's okay with you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, that's fine because these discussions we can really delve into it, and perhaps you can come back another time to talk about children who are like or teenagers, that kind of thing, and their screen time and the things that you encounter as a doctor or that parents encounter. And of course you'll encounter them when they come to you as their doctor, and I'm sure a lot of these kids have grown up with you, so when they do encounter issues, it's you who they go to. All right, so doctor, when it comes to children of school age, that's what, about 5 or 6? So we can just focus.
That's preschool. So maybe, we can talk about until maybe they're like 7 years old and older, when they really are in formal school. Yeah.
Okay. So doctor, when we talk about screen time, are we usually with the kids now and your patients that you experience, what screens do they get? What is screen time basically? What are the screens? What do they get exposed to? What kind of screens? Is it TV? Is it cell phones? Is it computers? iPads? I mean, I don't know what the very young kids are grasping at these days, and
Correct. And that's very good to define, no? Because sometimes, some parents think that screen time is just, gadget screen time, right? But when we talk about screen time, we are talking about all other gadgets and appliances with screens, no? So that includes not only your gadgets, your cell phones, your laptops, your tablets, but also, of course, TV, right?
Yes.
Or, whatever else has
A movie.
And you count the time, the duration, that the child is exposed to any one of these.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. So just in general, how much screen time is usually healthy for children of these age that we've talked about? Children up to around 0 to 7.
Yeah. Siguro, let me start, Nicole, with the rationale, or with the reason why we are we have this advocacy. No, most pediatricians, if not all, have this advocacy on screen time regulation. And I'm not saying prohibition, right? It's really more a regulation. And this is because children's brains are still developing, especially in the first 5 years, no, where we say that the brain of the child in the first 2,000 days is still very neuroplastic, or that it is still very moldable. No? And since that, it is very highly influenced by environmental factors. And when we talk about environmental factors, we are talking about things that they get exposed to in the environmental milieu within which they live in. No? So that includes, of course, the interactions that they have with the people around them. That includes the other factors that they are exposed to, and that includes, of course, screens, right? So, and that is why in the early years, we try to encourage parents to regulate the amount of screen time. So, to your question, are there allowed or recommended time limits, right, or duration to screen time? So it really depends on the age. No, prior to the pandemic, the American Academy of Pediatrics and also, the Philippine Pediatric Society had recommendations that for children less than 3 years old, there should be no screen time. Okay,
no screen time.
No screen time. But then again, the pandemic happened, and we realized how much technology is also an ally, no, in terms of our social relationships, in terms of our daily functioning. And also children, and I'm sure you notice you are, of the younger generation, and much more so for the younger ones, right? They are digital natives, no? So they can navigate the digital world intuitively. And so post-pandemic, maybe around like 2021, no, there were some modifications in terms of screen time for those less than 2. No, and the modification was that they can be exposed to screens as long as there is co-viewing. One, meaning there is an adult that co-views with them. But again, this should not be more than 30 minutes. No? And also, you can use screens for those less than 2 years old for social purposes. So meaning, in our context, for example, in the Philippines, for those who have parents who may be OFWs, for example, right? So when they talk to their parents abroad, and the young children may want to see their fathers or mothers, and their parents may want to see how they're growing. So those things are allowed. And then when they are older, when they are already around 3 years old until maybe 5, they can already have about an hour's worth of screen time. But again, these are just like, they're not absolute values, right? So what is, I think, most important to really understand, especially for parents and caregivers, is that there should be a limit. It should not be buffet screen time. It should not be accumulated screen time, as what happens in some. And then when the children are a little bit older, of course, they can have about 2 hours, 5 years old and above, because now they will have to contend with some schoolwork, And the other reason also for limiting or regulating screen time is that we want children to not be sedentary. We want them to play. In fact, we want them to play outside. In light of so many things like the increase in the prevalence rate of obesity, the increase in prevalence rate of even errors of refraction, myopia, or nearsightedness. So. And then also, the lack of social interaction among children. So that's what we want them to do. We want them to have more physical activity, preferably outside with peers.
Okay.
Those are the reasons why we really are recommending screen time durations. reasons.
Thank you, doctor. And those reasons make, I mean, perfect sense. And can I just clarify something with the 30 minutes and the 2 hours you're referring to a day? That's in a day.
A day, yes,
And then,
yes.
okay, so just to sort of recap, and please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong anytime. Just the some of the significant points I'm getting from you are there should be ideally a co-viewer, who's an adult or the caregiver or the yaya or whoever takes care of the children, and of course, that's because you also monitor what they're exposed to, and
Yeah.
sometimes there will be people who will turn on the TV and to distract the child while eating. That used to happen even before this generation, and so that's exposure. So you'll watch cartoons. That's screen time na rin, right? That's
Yeah,
okay.
yes,
And
yes,
then
yes.
and then also during the pandemic, you realize that technology could be an ally. So of course, when we have OFWs or just anyone, talking, it's okay because in a sense, children are getting socialized instead of the face to face. There's a here, look at the baby, or that's your grandmother, that's your
Yeah,
grandfather. And
yeah.
the children will immediately pick up the cues in your voice and know that this is someone special, and who knows how it computes into their brain, so the child's brain at that point. But it's already in a way forming a relationship if you cannot be there in person. It's kind of like
Correct.
forming a relationship with that other person, whether
Yeah.
it's the godmother, the grandmother, or the father, the mother, whatever it is. So that's also considered screen time. And then of course, just the on the opposite end, if you're really shouting at someone on the phone, maybe somebody else can watch the baby first. If there's an argument, but that happens in life though. And that's an exposure. So it's just a kind of like an extension of what used to happen with everything physically immediately. Okay, and then you were saying also the other reason, and let's get back to the tail end of what you were saying. The other reasons why are also you want children to play outside more so they don't have a sedentary lifestyle, because obesity, having too much weight and not really exercising will affect the children physically. And well, as adults it will affect them too, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Things can just
Yeah, you're correct. Yep.
and
Yeah,
then
in fact, those guidelines were put up initially pre-pandemic, no, I think in 2018 or 2019, by the World Health Organization, recognizing that screen time and physical activity and sedentary lifestyles were all, interrelated. So that's why they had those recommendations. And it's good that you also mentioned, no, that somebody who co-watches an adult, and hopefully a responsible adult at that, no,
yes,
can curate what the child is watching. No? So meaning, we really have to choose the content that our children are being exposed to. So hopefully they're educational, they're non-violent, they're socially promotive, and all of those. So those are the things that maybe we should also underline. Yeah.
yes. I mean, as a child, if you're growing up to it, and these are the things you're taking in, like if it's too much violence, too much. Say it's. I'm not really judging people who watch porn, but some people will, and then they're taking care of the kid. And what if there's, I mean, it's not issues they can easily understand already, that this is abuse, this is that, or this is perhaps what some might consider a perversity. So you don't want them to get desensitized.
That's right. That's
And,
right.
oh, it's okay, and then if someone does this to me, then it's fine. So just issues like that, main issues that we have been concerned with over time, over the years, but because of our own exposure also as adults, to a lot of screen time, this can happen. And so thank you for reminding us, because we're a lot of us may not be aware of it. Because we may think, like I've heard people say that this is a TV anyway, or it's just something on the phone that I'm watching while I'm caring for the kid, but that can enter the subconscious.
Yeah. Yes, correct, correct. And also, if they're watching by themselves, right? And these are children, their judgment, as I said, their brain is still developing, and the other parts or the other areas of the brain remain to be underdeveloped, and so their judgment, their development is still not that not similar to adults, no, and they may misjudge some behaviors, some actions, for example, no, and this is why we really would like to encourage parents not to show children behaviors that are inappropriate. For example, no, stunts or actions that are being done by some people that sometimes as adults we may find funny or amazing, right? But children will perhaps be amazed with those, but not understand the harm possibly or the danger that it can pose to them, and they may copy it. So,
Yes. I do remember even when I was a kid, and that was a long time ago, that some people would jump off like the bed bunk or something because of just reading comments.
Copying, yeah.
And then break an arm or something. So that's also there. You do have to warn that is fiction. If it really happens to you, tell me about it, and we can go around saving the world together. But right now, as far as I know, you're still a human being and a kid. Okay. Thank you, Doc. Yeah, even just that alone. You mentioned stunts. Yeah, that must happen a lot when without meaning to, kids will jump and survive anything, survive the 20-foot fall and land standing up and, being all that. And then something happens. Okay, doctor, yeah, that's actually, that goes to the physical well-being of a child. Can we talk just a little bit more about how it affects the physical well-being also? Too much screen time, perhaps. You're saying the brain is being developed, and then also like the sedentary lifestyle. Because what if someone says, well, as soon as they hit 7 or whatever, I'm sending them out to boot camp and doing exercises and all of these things together. Can you, I mean, even if it's just a short sliver of our time, can you tell us a little bit more about why the concern would be to control the screen time before it reaches a stage where, or before after the age of 7, where you start telling them to, okay, you have to exercise, and start incorporating it in their life, or play outside, or be socialized with other children.
Yeah, Nicole, play is a very important part of a child's development. No, it should not even be like forced, right? So, not only is it very important for brain development, for social emotional development, because you get to interact with peers, but it's also, of course, very important for physical development. No, so it is in play that children learn to coordinate their motor skills when they're still very small. That's where they learn to, even if it's not, a structured playground as what we have in, let's say, for example, private villages. No, even if it's really just an open vacant lot, for example, that's available in the neighborhood, and where they can run around and maybe go up steps and go down again. No, that is already a huge part, or a huge positive influence on how they coordinate, no, and eventually develop their physical capabilities. On top of that, physical activity will also make them healthy. I mean, to say it simply, no, in the sense that, of course, when they run around, when they move a lot instead of just sitting and watching inside the house, they can develop their muscles, they can develop their bones, and strengthen their physical capabilities as well. No? And then the other thing that is also very important, that's why we encourage physical activity outside the home, no? Is the benefit that it can give in terms of bone development, because we get a lot of vitamin D from sunlight. No?
Yes.
And there are studies now that even if we are in a tropical country, our children, or even us as adults, no, we are vitamin D deficient. Amazing, right? When we have a lot of sun outside our homes, right? So this is the reason why we encourage, no, more time outside playing and doing physical stuff.
And you mentioned vacant lots are some of the most, well, as long as there are no snakes and stuff. I mean,
Of
but
course.
they're the most like best places to play in, and you make up your own games with other
Yeah.
kids. And then there's even the traditional habulan po, yung
Yeah.
the one base, all
But
of it.
our children have forgotten already. It's because they're cooped really in their homes, in their rooms, and all of that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe sometimes, as to the parents, it's easier to keep an eye on them that way, because you get paranoid, and you can't, and then you remember the things you used to do when you were a kid. Like, for example, I used to climb on top of the roof. We all did, and then we got caught, but we'd still, things like that. But hey, we survived. I'm not telling people to go on top of the roof.
Yeah.
Speaking,
We're not encouraging that.
no, I'm just saying that climbing trees, and yes, you can also fall, but there are things that happen anyway. For all you know, if your child is not that greatly physically developed and doesn't have agility and all that, they might fall down in school and maybe have a vitamin D deficiency, and then they'll break an arm anyway. Just saying. We never know how it will go. Don't want to bring it to the negative or the fears, but it is coming from you as a doctor and a pediatrician and a developmental and behavioral pediatrician. I was making fun of someone the other night, and that's my karma for saying developmental in a funny way. So, um, okay, karma comes fast to me when I make fun of how people speak. I just love accents, so I just do them all the time. So these things, all these things considered, it is really important for a child's overall health. There's the mental, the emotional, and the physical. I just wanted to get into the basics with you more, no, before asking just a few more questions about the specifics. Like, I'd asked you what healthy screen time is, but like before bed and all of that. There's also the emotional component, no? I mean, which is, I guess, tied to the intellectual somehow. But the children get socialized more. I mean, even if you don't have other kids to play with, let's say where you live, if an adult plays with a child outside, is that sufficient? Or
Yeah. Yes,
let's
yes.
say they don't.
In the absence of peers, right? If that's what you're asking, because sometimes, some parents will say, "Oh, because it's just us, the family. There really are no neighbors of the same age, for example, or other children don't really come out and play anymore, and all of that." Yes, of course. When we talk about playing outside, it can mean that the child plays with peers, or maybe one of the parents or the yaya in our context, or the caregiver, and or maybe a younger and an older sibling for that
Yeah,
matter.
or
So
a cousin.
as long as there really is activity and there is interaction, ideally.
And
So
they can see other children also. So okay, they exist. I'm not.
yes, that's part of creating awareness. No, in fact, the other reason why we really recommend limitation of screen time is because watching on a screen solitarily, meaning by yourself, no, is so passive, right? They're just watching there, and if they have a question in their head, who answers? Right? So the video will not answer them. And language development is very much dependent on a serve and return process, meaning the child has to say something and somebody has to answer when he asks a question, right? So and that's how the connections in our brain develops. So it's it's that phenomenon.
So when
That
you learn
is on.
language, there are synapses and
Yeah,
things that they fire off, and the connections
yeah,
are created. How
correct.
about when you speak it? does it also
Of course, yes. When you the connections happen and they get reinforced by interactions, by, as I said, by the serve and return.
Yes.
It may happen when a child is maybe listening to a video, for example, or a song, but it can get reinforced and more stimulated if there is an interaction, if there is a serve and return.
And that
Yeah.
includes sign language, no? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
learning, I don't
Of
know.
course,
Sorry.
sign language or visual language is still language. It can still be a form of a communication process for those children who may be hearing impaired. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, there, doctor, we just have to take a short break, but we'll be right back. And then I'll ask you slightly more specific questions, like that some people may want to know, like what about the bedtime and all of these things that are related to some, to having some screen time. But we'll try. You've explained so much already that I think so many people get it, they understand, and I'm sure this will serve not just to inform but to help educate and help out many parents, caregivers, and maybe some kid is watching and saying, see mom, see dad, my mom always, don't stop blaming the mother all the time. Okay, anyway, doctor, we're just gonna take a short break. We'll be right back, folks. Stay tuned to Healthline with Makati Med.
You're listening to DZRJ 810 AM. We'll be right back after these reminders.
Hi, this is Dr. Gia Season from Makati Medical Center, and I'm happy to share that our world-class quality healthcare with the heart is now more accessible and affordable at Makati Med Care Access, Araneta City. What's more, Makati Med Care Access is the only single-use hemodialysis center in Araneta City. It's now easier for patients to avail of renal care services right in the heart of Cubao. We offer health screening and diagnostic procedures in this facility at affordable rates. You can get services such as mammogram, ultrasound, lab procedures, ECG, and many others. We believe that access to affordable, quality, and compassionate healthcare is a basic human right. And we at Makati Med Care Access Araneta City are doing our best to make this possible to more people. You can find us at the ground floor of Manhattan Plaza Tower 1 in Araneta Center, Cubao. We are open from Mondays to Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. For inquiries, you may reach out to us at the numbers below. We look forward to serving you here at Makati Med Care Access, Araneta City.
You're back with Healthline, keeping you healthy. Moderated by Nicole Jacinto.
Hey, welcome back to Healthline with Makati Med. I'm your host, Nicole Jacinto. We're here with Dr. Bernadette Benitez. We are talking about screen time, or rather healthy screen time for children. We've focused and zeroed in on children from ages 0 to about 7. Doctor has explained so articulately the reasons why, and I think just getting those basic reasons out are very, they already give us so much information, and the examples that you gave about, they explain it. It's about the physical, the intellectual, the emotional development of children, and it already gives like the reason why, because there was why, and you did say earlier, you said that okay, screen time was adjusted after the pandemic because the generation, I get, what would you label it, Gen Z or Gen Alpha or whatever?
Yeah, the digital natives.
The digital natives. So we can
The
learn
Gen
this
Z and
way.
the Alpha generation, yes.
Okay. Okay, let's not go with that. It's okay. I socialize with and I'm friends with people of all ages, but sometimes my generation gets into arguments with the, and it's okay. You know, I get you both, but sometimes I do agree with some of the, with some of the. Never mind. That's not good. Okay, so you answered how, prolonged screen time can affect the development of a child, and we talked about, you even mentioned myopia at some point, which is too much watching at a young age, like, and you maybe sticking it near your face without knowing. It's like when we were kids and they were like, don't put the book too close to your face, like they put it a bit further, or don't stop reading already. This was like, for me, like, stop reading already. I can see the flashlight under the blanket. It's difficult to get me off the books. Um, but for kids, all since we're talking about bedtime, a lot of people have a routine for bedtime, and one of the things that we have heard over all these years is do not make your kids, or at what time, why is it especially bad? Well, we've heard that do not make your kids watch TV right before bedtime. TV or
Or any screen for that matter that emits very bright light, right?
so
Yeah.
so what's is there something to that, and what's that, doctor? Like, what can happen if kids, especially of the age that we're talking about, watch are exposed to screens or screen time right before bedtime?
Yeah. Well, number one, no, that runs counter to what we already talked about setting limitations, right? So when you say limitations, you have a schedule, right? So you talk to older children about time limits
Yeah.
and setting the time that there should be no screens at least an hour before bedtime, no? Should be, you don't have to be very rigid about it, but
Yes. Yes.
should be enforced consistently and regularly. So maybe you will have a different set of rules for weekends, for example, because it's a weekend anyway, right? So, but the reason behind that, aside from making children get used to limits and time schedules, for example, uh, structure is also one thing, that's being addressed there. As I said, their brains are still developing, and like a house, it still needs a little bit of a scaffolding, no? So they have to really be helped in terms of having some structure to their time, and to the tasks that they actually do. And then the other thing there is bright lights, bright screens affect the way our brain and our sleep and wake cycles function. No, so it can also affect the melatonin in our brains that trigger our sleepiness, if I may
Yes.
call it that, no,
Yes.
and our wakefulness for that
Yes.
matter. So if you are exposed to bright lights, i.e., screens, no, gadgets, telephones, and all of that, by when it's already near bedtime, then your brain might think that, oh, it's still daytime.
Yes.
It's still very bright and it's not yet time to sleep. So that is one of the reasons why, even for adults, that's
Yes.
really how, we should function. That's why we encourage bedtime routines. And when we talk about bedtime routines, at least an hour before you want your children to sleep. And this is also because they have to have an adequate enough sleep duration, right? So later on, maybe we can talk about the two. So before bedtime, at least an hour before that, you already should have a routine. Number one, all gadgets are off. You should already have pajama or whatever you sleep with. After maybe taking a shower or doing punas or whatever. Brushing your teeth, going into wherever you sleep. If you have your own bedroom, turning the lights down, and all of that. No, if you use an aircon or anything else that will cool off the room, an electric fan or whatever, turn that on already. That's part of the bedtime routine. No, but more importantly, screen time at least an hour before bedtime should be done. No,
So
screen
even the
time.
content, not just the lights, even the content can stimulate the mind too. I mean, I experienced.
True. If you get excited, no, but more than that, no, it's really
It's the
background.
physical.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes, there is like even for adults, you kind of wind down and have a routine,
Correct.
or you can be like me and sometimes just fall asleep anywhere. They're so tired or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes if your brain is too active, you really can't rest. No, you can't. It need the brain needs time to to calm down and then to have some downtime before it really can rest.
You were talking about the sleep hours that a child needs, and especially at age. Can you tell us about that, doctor?
Yeah, very important, no? When children are young, let's say when they're like 2 years old and below, they sleep long, right? So they sleep maybe for mga 12 hours, something like that. Put together. Now, sometimes there are naps, there are an hour naps, yeah. But all together, for younger children, sleep time should be around 9 to 12 hours, no? Especially for those who maybe are preschool and down, no? And then they also, should take naps. But if you remember, I don't know when you were a child, but when we were children, we would be forced to take naps, right?
Yes.
And then when you become an adult, you
and God, I wish I could take those naps.
Would give anything just for a quick nap in the afternoon so you can break from work, right? But anyway, that aside, sleep duration for those who are 5 years old and older should be about 8 to 12 hours. No, and our children now, that's why it's very difficult, especially for those in school, because there's homework, and sometimes they can use that as a reason for their laptops to be on or their gadgets to be on because they have to finish homework, right? So it's a very difficult line to tread, right?
Yes.
So but just make sure that children have adequate sleep, no? That's also one of the reasons why we are really recommending screen times to be regulated.
I also think, just very quickly, that sometimes I don't know if they've changed it in the last few years, but you give too much homework. They're already there. You're teaching them. They're supposed to learn. You're supposed to be interacting with them as teachers, as educators. Then there's sheet work pa or whatever they call it. And then there's homework pa. And it's just like they're there for so long. It's too long of a period of a day, and they're not exactly there just for childcare. And then so much homework. And then over the weekend too, how can they also play and enjoy if they're not even exposed to screen time? And then like I said, there's that now when you do the homework and the laptop or the computer, there's that thin line that you have to try. Like, are you really doing your homework, or are you searching on something, or are you just staring at it because you're too tired, right?
True. Some schools have already cut down the number of homeworks, right? So especially on weekends, so that children get to really sort of chill, right? And relax over
and maybe for some parents it's like, thank God I don't have to do your homework. Okay. Anyway, all right, so doctor, let's talk about just I'm told we should I should ask the more important questions, or not important, but because you gave a lot of it, not significant, just maybe the more intense questions, that the bigger questions, like how can, if let's say a child is not, so I'll just pose the question. So if a child is not, let's say there's something affected with their development and their behavior, and I don't know if you can relate this directly to screen time, since you are a behavioral and developmental psychologist, sorry, which also makes you a psychologist to parents as well, I guess. Can it affect them in such a way where they start, they start having these behavioral problems? And if you can't correlate it directly, I mean, somehow, this question has come up.
Yeah. There have been many studies around screen time and development, right? So there are the conclusions are not still very well founded, no, but there are relationships that they see with prolonged screen time and language development, for example. So they have seen that, especially for those 2 years old and below who have been exposed to screens for more than an hour, have some noted delays in language. So, but then again, these are small studies, and the conclusions may not be as solid, no, as opposed to bigger, and better controlled studies. But suffice it to say that, especially for children who already may be experiencing some language delays, no, this is really when I put my foot down, no, if I can say that, when I tell parents to increase language enrichment in the home through social interaction, through interpersonal language interaction, because screens, as I said a while back, are very passive. No? They maybe can entertain for a bit, but it will not help stimulate language development in the way face-to-face conversations do it. So that's most important.
Do you see any behavioral problems, like in terms of, I guess, kids acting out, or
Yeah.
like perhaps they're not really little psychos yet, but so, I mean, I'm using that term lightly now, but I mean it. They start. I don't know. Where's this? Okay, so this is not a conversation with a psychiatrist in terms of, or a psychologist, like, all these different personalities and sociopaths or psychopaths. But do you see behavioral problems that, I mean, maybe they're just acting out and they can be corrected, that are related also to this issue, or not really?
Oh yeah. There are a lot of children, in fact, a lot of parents who have concerns around how to regulate screen time without seeing their children have a meltdown, or have tantrums. And this is really because children have been used to just having unregulated time on screens, right? So that when parents take away the screen, then it becomes a battleground, right? I remember, you just saying that. Of course, we don't use the word psychos or whatever, right? But children, and I tell this to parents, children are better psychologists than us. They know when they can twirl us around, their fingers, and then they know when to, sort of like manipulate.
Yes, manipulate. Naturally manipulative, because they're learning how to get what they want.
Correct, because they know that, oh, if I do this, because remember that when children are in the preschool age, no, even in the late toddler years, so meaning around 3 to 4 years, and of course even older, no, they already understand simple cause and effect. Meaning, oh, when I did this, my mom did this, right? So meaning, for example, screen time, and the mom says, because the screen time has been unregulated, and then now biglang the mom will say, oh, no more na, only 1 hour, for example, and the mom takes away the gadget. Of course, that's a huge difference. And if the child shows a behavior that gets the response that he or she likes, then it will be embedded in his head that, oh, that's the behavior that gets the response that I like. Meaning, if I cry loud, if I lie down on the floor, if I scream my head out in a public space, and my mom gets embarrassed, then it gets prevented, all of these things. So we have to be very careful as adults, how first we have to implement the screen time limits and regulation. Second, we have to be careful in terms of making children understand what the consequences are, of following and not following. So always I say that you reinforce the positive behavior. Meaning, kunwari, if you ask, okay, time's up, please let me have the iPad, and your child gives it to you, and then you reinforce it, and then you say, hey, good job, you're within the time limit. Maybe over the weekend I can give you extra 15 minutes, those things. Just over the weekend, I was waiting for my luggage at the airport, and there was this boy beside me, who was hounding his father because the father was waiting for the luggage, and the iPhone was, I guess, low bat, and he goes, Dad, look for the power bank because the iPad is, low battery and I can't watch. And he was shouting in the luggage area. And so I was looking at him, and the dad was just not minding him. And he goes, if you don't do that, I'm going to throw this phone. He goes, so, it was good that I was just, watching the dad react to the boy. And I was looking at how he would, respond to it. But he really just didn't mind. And he said, you wait, because, I'm waiting for the luggage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the boy, and he looked at me and he stopped.
You were
So,
like,
yeah.
listen, kid.
Yeah.
You're like,
So those things can happen, right? So that's why, we are the adults, and we have to help them learn to set limits and regulate their behavior. Now, that's the main purpose.
and also I just want to remind people out there, like, if, let's say, you're, the mom is doing, let's say you're not a single mother with a dad, and the mother's doing it like, give me the phone already because it's been an hour. And then let's say the child throws a fit, because that's how they know they might,
Get attention. Yeah.
if the father or the dad or whatever, don't be like, ay nako, just give it to them already. Don't put the dick in front of, you have to be unified in
That's right.
this together.
Correct.
Doctor,
Correct.
do you see any, like, what do you consider red flags for parents to come to you, whether it's for the development of the child, or or the behavior, for you to bring the child and for them to also consult or maybe seek out help, like, oh, there are red flags, and we should get a little bit more help for this, and
Yeah.
perhaps also some support for themselves, if we don't also want people who are raising their kids or caregivers to feel like, they're doing such a bad job, because they're probably like also, working and doing other things. But I mean, just to get, well, the first question then, red flags.
Correct. Of course, we don't want them to be guilty. Some parents become guilty, but sometimes parenting duties and responsibilities are really very heavy, no? Especially if you don't have people around you to help. No,
Yes.
so and this was very evident, for example, over the pandemic, right? When both parents, for example, were working from home, and then children, those who did not have, extensions, meaning no grandparents to help them out, no yayas, and of course, they really allowed their children to sit with just a screen on, right? But number one, again, we always encourage, right, that there should always be, in fact, it should be a family screen time rule, no? Meaning, if we tell our children to have no phones on during mealtime or at the dinner table, then everyone,
Don't do it yourself, yeah.
right? Do it yourself, right? Walk the talk. But the red flags, to your question, the red flags that we should watch out for, and usually most pediatricians will ask this now, because this is part of our pediatric surveillance, is, do children, especially the older ones, already display behaviors that are of concern? Meaning, are they more violent, for example, or do they engage in physical activities that can be injurious to themselves or to others? No, so for example, do they hit others because they're copying, for example? And to our example a while back, do they do precarious actions like jumping, and eventually hurting themselves and all of that? The other thing is, for older children, if they are very difficult to take away or from their gadgets to the point that they skip meals,
Yeah.
or they don't sleep adequately.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's why there really has to be like a physical separation of the gadget, no, from the younger child, meaning you don't allow them to go to sleep with a gadget beside them, no. Ideally, sana, take it away so that there is no reason
Oh
for
my
them
God,
to
just take it out.
wake up in the middle of the night and go back to their gadget and play again when the parents are already sleeping, right? So and then if there are, for the older ones, no, and as you said, we're just talking about school age children and younger, but for the older ones, especially those who are like uh tweens or pre-adolescents, and the adolescents, the teenagers, when there are behavioral changes in the way that a child who used to be very sociable is now withdrawing from social relationships, no? Because there can be some social bullying that's happening, social media bullying that's happening, or they may be exposed to some content that's really affecting them. So those are the red flags.
Okay, thank you, doctor. And of course, it's just like, barring all other things, like there's no domestic abuse in the house where the child's imitating the behavior of somebody there, and all these other things. These are
Yes.
the red flags. And well, as long as you take your child to the doctor and you get to the bottom of it and you're honest with yourselves too, then you can begin to deal with all of these issues. um Doctor, is there like, do parents, what can parents or families like do to just to feel more supported um in their in their having a healthier environment when it comes to screen time? And I'm sure some of the adults in the family would like to, have more screen time on their own, and they probably need it also for work or whatever it is that relaxes them, but they're adults already, and they can do this. Let's say, just any, there's no organization, of course, but do you have any tips for them? Like,
I think usually the best tip is to maybe either talk to parents who have like same age children, and then talk to your pediatrician, no, if you really need further counseling about screen time. But know too that there are other activities, interactive activities that parents can have with their children, not just with screens, no? So we also advocate, especially now where, we see really very prevalent literacy poverty, that's happening. So reading to children, no, using appropriate, age appropriate books, just having them flip through pages while your child is on your lap or beside you, and reading books. It can even be part of the bedtime routine, for that matter. And then doing other activities when parents find time to also be off their screens, no? So in fact, that's also good for parents, diba? So when you get off screen and you do some physical activities with your children, that's good. In fact, at least quantity and quality is very important, and the quantity that's just being asked in terms of interactive play, either with a peer or an adult, for that matter, is just 15 to 20 minutes of really uninterrupted playing and interaction, no? And then you don't need naman super expensive toys, super expensive things to play around with. You can just find, scrap paper here and there, crayons,
phones.
yeah, and
The things,
and it even improves their imagination and their creativity when you do that, right?
yeah.
So those
I mean,
things.
if it's raining outside, okay, play some cards, yung monkey.
Yes, yes,
And,
correct. So,
you know,
parents just have to remember how they were when
they
they
were
were
also how it was when they grew up. Yeah.
yeah, and how they played.
And not to my sister, before she was 5, she memorized Alice in Wonderland in another language from my mom reading to her another
Wow.
language, and she memorized the turn of the pages.
That's right.
So anyway, So, Doctor, I'm told we're running out of time. Is there anything you would like to say? Any final words from you on the subject matter? And I do hope you return to talk about like older children and not just screen time and all these other issues that have to do with their development and behavior also, which is your specialty, or anything else that you'd like to discuss.
Sure, that will be my pleasure. But maybe coming from this conversation, Nicole, there are two things that I would like to maybe underscore and emphasize. No, among parents, number one, parenting really is it's a job. It's a responsibility that we don't have a manual for, right? But because our children, especially the young children, their brains are still developing, we have to provide somehow a structure, and a scaffold for that brain to really develop appropriately. So how to do that is to help provide limits while they still are very young, not necessarily very rigid limits, but to really set some structure to their schedule and to their activities so that we help them develop and optimize their brain development. So let's have more interactions. As we said, let's also walk the talk and perhaps regulate our screen times as well, so that we'd be able to help promote not only social-emotional development that comes with interaction, but also their learning capability or their cognitive development, and also their physical development. And the second thing is, if parents have any concern, or other caregivers for that matter, please talk to your pediatrician or your attending pediatrician. We have our pediatric staff in Makati Medical Center are all very competent and very excellent pediatric providers. And if there truly is a concern that will need further assessment and management, your pediatrician will refer you to a subspecialist like us in the field of developmental and behavioral pediatrics. Okay, so thank you very much, Nicole.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for being on the program. Thank you for taking the time and the effort. It was very, very, very informative and educational discussion. I do hope you come back to discuss more of these matters with us. Thank you for tuning in this week, folks. Everybody take care. See you next week on Healthline with Makati Med. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Healthline with expert doctors from Makati Med, giving you the chance to interact, uplifting your lifestyle. Moderated by Nicole Jacinto. Tune in again next week for your weekly dose of Healthline.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.